Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is another week where Read and React watches Hard Knocks, the AFC North. I am your host, Ryan Parrish. I am here, as always, with my co-host, Rylan. The road gets narrow this time of year. I can't have you putting on any style points. You ready to go this week?
Oh yeah.
All right, we're going to jump right in. It was a rather straightforward episode, I would say, this week. We got a little bit of some of the off the field stuff, but there was a real focus this week on sort of specifically the Steelers and the Browns quite a bit, a little bit of Bengals, and virtually no Ravens, which we will touch on later. But first, why don't you hit us with your rapid recap? What did we see this week?
All right, read and recap. Let's go. We started off with a quick recap of the Browns Monday Night Football loss against the Broncos last week, which the first episode kind of didn't go over. Then we went right into the Pittsburgh Cleveland rematch narrative. We saw some of their prep leading up to that matchup. Like Ryan said, barely any Ravens in this episode. Then we had some quick little vignettes. We got some Jameis Winston lore, I guess, of how he came to the Browns. We got a look inside the Porter household between Joey Porter Jr. and Sr. Um, we learned that Myles Garrett was sick during the Steelers Browns game. We got a cool little segment with Jamar Chase and this young man named Brixton, who I believe is dealing with cancer, and that was a pretty heartwarming bit. Then yeah, lots of game footage from Steelers Browns, and then we ended with Bengals versus Cowboys.
All right, well done, Rylan. So, initial first impressions of this episode. I'll just start us off. For me, I think what I am enjoying the most is I feel like, and maybe this is just projection as a Steelers fan who's sick of being the also-rans in the national attention for the last few years, but I felt like coming into this, sure, there was always going to be some highlight on Tomlin just because of his riz, if you will, to say what the kids are saying these days. But
No.
but you know, he was always gonna, have some quotables and take up some limelight. But I always feel like the Steelers have kind of been they're good, but they're not real. And so for the first two episodes, truly to be so heavily Steelers has been a delight. And I would just say again, watching the other rooms. My biggest impression is the Steelers look like a team that's professional about their mission. Like they have a mission, they're locked in, and they are operating at a high level. And I look at some of the other teams, and I mean, like the Bengals bit where Coach Taylor is up in front of them. I felt like I was watching a Tim Robinson sketch where he's basically just like, there's not much I can do to fix what's going on here. He's like
Oh
he's
my
begging
God.
them to, play hard as the season is not going how they want. And I don't know, as a official hater card carrying member, love to see it.
Yeah, the whole like raise your hand if you like football bit, I just died a little bit inside. I was like, of course they like football. Like maybe the fact that we're focusing on this is why you're losing so many games. But
For sure, for sure. I mean, it goes back to last week where I felt like, Cleveland's coach got a lot of praise for his rant, but to me, it was like you got to do this with, these professionals. You got to rant about how we got to play hard and like I don't know. And I just feel like the Steelers just operate at a different level. It's like Tomlin offers this certain level of like, hey, we're all professionals here, and like I might guide some of the younger players a little more as they're kind of getting their feet wet and discovering who their NFL, persona is. But he respects them as adults, and like you got to step up, or we'll find somebody who will.
exactly. Yeah, my kind of takeaways from the episode very similar to yours. I like the Steelers focus right now. I hope it stays. I think it'll stay. Maybe not quite as heavy in future weeks as we just didn't have any Ravens this week, and that's probably going to change. But I mean, I guess one thing, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it, as you're, I guess, more of a Hard Knocks veteran than I am. But like, as good as this behind the scenes stuff has been, there hasn't been a lot of, I don't know if bombshell's the right word, but something that like only Hard Knocks could give you that you didn't already kind of know going into it. Like I was kind of hoping to see some of the Deontay Johnson fallout, and that wasn't even touched on. And I feel like from clips I've seen from past Hard Knocks, that would have been something they would have at least touched on a bit. So a little bit disappointed there, but again, it was a very solid episode.
Yeah, I think, if this had been one of the training camp ones or one of those types of things where there was a little less time of the episode needing to be dedicated to actual game. I think maybe we would get some of those, but it's hard to say because Hard Knocks is kind of this interesting thing where it's when you get the bombshells, it's almost unexpected because the teams still, I think, get a little bit of sign off on what is shown and or at least what they allow the cameras to go see. And, even just watching the Steelers game and the highlights, like we didn't get any of the kicking misery. We didn't get any of, the closest we got to the Ravens was we got a shot of Justin Tucker when he was talking about how we got to focus in, the coach when Harbaugh was up
Yeah,
there. So it's like it's really interesting. And that's why the Giants one was so interesting this offseason is because they really gave us stuff where it's like I don't think we would have seen this, and especially with how bad it made the team look.
yep,
Whereas like I feel like Hard Knocks kind of like likes to massage sometimes over the. I think the most iconic, like, whoa, what was that and what just happened? Probably has to be the time Chad Ochocinco in Miami got cut because of some off the field legal issues that he was going through at the time. So I guess I wouldn't say that I'm shocked that we haven't seen too much drama, especially with Deontay. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with him in his career. But that being said, let's talk about stars of the show. I mean, again, we kind of had a narrow focus, and I think, you could point out who the star probably most weeks is going to be.
yeah. Mike Tomlin, he was
Shocker.
the star of episode one, pretty much the star of episode two. We've kind of touched on all this stuff already, but I mean, he just clearly cares a lot about his players. There's the Steelers meetings with Tomlin in charge are different than the meetings with the other three teams. They're super intense, but just the way he phrases things, the way he talks to his players, you can tell there's a lot of respect there, but just a lot of intensity there as well. And we'll get to it in the quote section, but he was really high on that leaderboard as well. Once again,
For sure. And I would say just quickly as an aside before I give us at least another nominee is that I think the thing that I really appreciate about him is sure they're not going to show us any of like the scheming they do, but it feels like he finds a way to know what they want to attack and gives the players something like tangible, like a realistic goal of like, hey, be aware of this. Be aware this is probably what's going to be going through guys' minds. I've been here for so long, this
yeah,
is what's probably going through your minds and we got to combat that. And so I just think that's really cool. And that he challenged all those guys in that room to be leaders as well and gave them like the ammunition to start their own message, which I thought was cool. If I was going to
right.
push back and give
Oh,
us
sorry.
any
Yeah,
other kind of nominee for star of the show, uh, I think this episode specifically is Joey Porter Sr. Great to
absolutely.
see him. Honestly, would love to see him more. I know there's probably not going to be a whole lot of reason to give us this close of a look at the Porter family moving forward, just because they're going to try to cover a lot of stuff, and he's, not currently holding a position with the team. But I mean, him saying that he doesn't eat in Baltimore, Cleveland, or Cincinnati was a gem. And him talking about his fight with Green, I think it was from the Browns back in the day, and him talking about how can't turn his neck now, but don't mistake that before the surgery he was bobbing and weaving like Floyd, as he put it. I just thought I've always thought Peasy was an entertaining character. He was on the Steelers right around the time when I was kind of, turning into like a preteen and really starting to like understand football and understanding all the characters involved and what is happening in the game. So he'll always have a special place in my heart because as I was watching it with my roommate and we were talking about kind of like the whole dynamic there and I said what I loved about that fight in particular because I remember that one is I loved that he was always about his business, but he didn't start that fight. He just won it after he got jumped by two guys, and then to like really bring it all home. And then we just stayed beating Cleveland during those years. Like Cleveland never would win against us, and I
Oh
just
yeah.
really I don't know. It was great seeing an old time player like that.
Well, and that look on Joey Porter Jr.'s face during his dad talking about the good old days was just so perfect. We've all been there in some conversation before. Just that like
Uh-huh.
smile, shake your head, nod, whatever. Like, oh, okay, dad.
All right. Moving on. Quotes from this episode. Not a super quote heavy episode. You had a few lined up. I got a couple, but why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. Oh, already. I got to look at the ones I wrote down here and try to start with a good one. Oh yeah, here's a bit of a deep cut, but after Jameis threw that pick and they cut to Tomlin on the sideline, and he's just like, "Gunslingers, gunslingers, gunslingers," and it was funny because he's talking about Jameis. Part of me feels like he was having flashbacks of Big Ben near the end of his career during those like five interception games that also came with five touchdowns, and he was
Mhm.
like kind of reminiscing on. I mean, not to diss Ben, all-time great quarterback for the Steelers, but kind of seeing shades of that to a lesser extent with Jameis, I thought was pretty entertaining.
For sure. And I mean, when we saw the meetings, he was talking about how there was going to be opportunities for turnovers. He was showing all the he was showing all the pick sixes that the Broncos were able to get against them. And I just feel like, that was another instance of like Tomlin pointing something out during the week. And it's just that type of year where, things just are going the Steelers' way. Did you have any other ones?
Oh yeah. We got the one with yeah, to go back to a Joey Porter Sr. recounting that fight, and he's not gonna eat anywhere, and then he's like, "They're gonna spit in my pasta." I was like, "That's got to be an all-time Hard Knocks quote right there."
Yeah, definitely up there. Definitely on the spin in the seafood. Another one that I had, obviously we already did the road is narrow, and he was telling his players, I think he was talking to Russ about how this time of year, obviously, competition gets tougher. It's basically playoff time. Um, but beyond that, I think another one, I loved his conversation with Joey Porter Jr. Obviously, they discussed whether or not they thought LASIK was I don't know, something that they should get. Apparently, Junior and Tomlin, not LASIK guys, both out on it. But in that same conversation, he was talking to him about how things don't happen as fast as you would like them to, and he's talking to him about, Penn State and how he only played in 4 games that his first year as a freshman, and how he probably wanted to play, more than that. But the quote, again, very simple, very to the point, but he just says shit be like that or something like that. Is that's the way shit goes. And I just feel like that's such a relatable moment for him. Another one that I would maybe go for is they're getting into the game. It's about to be kickoff, and Cam Hayward on the sideline is just like getting hyped, and it's just like we got shit to do. And I love the mentality. I love the hunger that they all seem to have, and the confidence. And it wasn't like a great quote episode, I would say, but those would be some of the ones that I would nominate.
Yeah, to focus back in on that Tomlin Porter conversation, one that I just remembered was he's talking to Joey Porter Jr. and Tomlin goes, "You're going to be great, but you're not going to be great today. You got to push towards it, and it's never going to happen as quickly as you like." And that's
Hmm.
just, I think, in an essence, is why Tomlin is such a great coach because there's that encouragement. You're going to be great, but at the same time, it's not going to happen. This one day. There's still stuff to work on, and I just thought that that was a really really great moment.
Yeah, great coaching for sure. Just like you said, positive reinforcement, but also, hey, job's not finished. If I did have one more dark horse quote, it's actually going to come from outside of the Pittsburgh organization. But Miles Garrett commenting on Jameis Winston's running style and saying he already looks like the unk at the cookout did get a solid. We had to pause when I was watching me and my roommate. We did have to pause it because we were laughing pretty hard at that one.
He was running like that. That
No,
was
he looks like I don't know if you've ever seen it's a really old meme, but it's like this little girl who's like running away from something and he literally looks like I'd have to find it, but I don't know, man. He looks scared. He looks like he's running away from something that's gonna like eat him or something and it's but he has like a very youthful like uncoordinated almost looking style of run and I just think Yeah, that was enjoyable, but that's about all we can say was enjoyable for the Browns in this episode.
No, well, yeah, and I guess yeah, the one other Jameis moment was when that Steelers fan, that little girl was asking him to sign that football, and he was like, "I respect your courage." I got a kick out of
Yeah,
that one, and
that was pretty funny. That was pretty funny.
the miss face mask on Joe Burrow when they cut to Zach Taylor on the sideline, he was like, "That was a face mask. He was looking out his ear hole."
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of Taylor as a coach. I don't know about you, but that scene gave me like, yeah, I know that every coach is probably going to be yelling about penalties and the Tomlin and then probably do that too. But I don't know. I was watching that, it just gave me the ick. I don't know, man. I was
I
like,
mean the
I don't
face
think this
mask was
Bengals team is going far under
pretty
Taylor.
bad. It was a pretty bad missed call. So
It was a terrible missed call. He had all the right to be upset, but I don't know, man. Just something about Zach Taylor gives me the ick, and I just don't think they're gonna ever get where they need to go with him as their head coach. But
yeah, I'm not sure if you've seen Gridiron Heights, but they're like the depiction of Zach Taylor gets more and more spot on with every Hard Knocks episode.
I love Gridiron Heights. One of my favorite NFL parody accounts for sure, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, other than that though, I think what are we thinking is our what's our quote? What's our winner this week?
Oh gosh, there's really not one that stands out above the other ones.
All right, we're gonna give it to I say then we give it to it's not necessarily a great quote, but I think we give it to the Joey Porter Sr. story then because him not
Yeah.
eating in those AFC North places I think is going to be the thing I remember most. All right, a
Yep.
couple other topics to just kind of quickly touch on from the episode and then we'll get out of here. What do we make of the Myles Garrett illness?
Honestly, I've seen people making fun of Miles Garrett about it online. I don't really get it because he wasn't complaining about it a lot during the episode. It was just something Hard Knocks decided to focus on. So whatever. What I will say is there were a couple Miles Garrett quotes in there that I do think we can poke a bit of fun at. And
Hmm.
one was when he was talking about the Brown Steelers rivalry, and he was like, sometimes we win and sometimes they win. And it was like, it's never quite that 50-50. And
Hmm.
then when they were talking about what to play for the rest of the season, and everyone's talking about these big ideas, then Miles Garrett is sitting there like personal accolades. I was like, come on, man. Like it could have just been like edited weird, but it was such a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one I was thinking about too. Shelby Harris maybe was an interesting insight because I feel like really laid his heart out there on like, listen, guys,
Absolutely.
this is your livelihood you're playing for, and I don't know, it didn't seem like that room was all that fired up or listening. Miles Garrett was maybe sick, so I'll give him some slack on his energy in that moment. It seemed like he was kind of just like when like you were in school and teacher was talking about something and you were kind of just zoning out and then everyone's looking at you because teacher told asked you to answer something and you're like, oh
Oh yeah.
shit. I feel like that's what happened to Miles Garrett there was he was zoning out and then he was like, oh shoot, I gotta be a leader here. What do we do when we're 3-9?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
or 3-10. But yeah, I don't know. So that was interesting. Uh, the other little interesting tidbit, and I mean, I feel like, if you're plugged into this division, you probably know some of this already, but the just sheer amount this whole division is tied to Cleveland specifically. I will always find interesting. Uh, Cleveland, obviously, if anybody's a fan of, old mythology, is a bit of the ship of Theseus. They are not necessarily all the original parts of the original Cleveland Browns. Their original founder went and founded the Bengals. The original team went to Baltimore, but this I didn't know was that the Steelers logo, they obviously were already the Steelers and had all of that of their own accord, but I didn't realize it was the Cleveland Steelworkers or the association, some sort of union in Cleveland, was the was who suggested that the team should adopt the steel logo and essentially make that iconic logo that we all love so much. So yeah, just weird how closely tied together all of these teams are. And then last little non non-Steelers divisional wrap up, I feel like we got to comment on. You touched on it earlier. A pretty heartwarming look into Jamar Chase's relationship with a child that is a cancer survivor and has been, someone that he's kept in touch with. I do feel like, and again, I'm a card carrying hater,
Oh no.
but he messed up the celebration. He worked all week, first off. The fact that they're spending all week working on a celebration, I think, also shows you where their mind's at and the level of that organization. But two, not only that, not only did they spend all week working on this celebration, he gets the touchdown and immediately screws up the celebration. He told the kid he was doing it for him and he didn't do it right.
Oh yeah, because what? There was supposed to be.
He was supposed to get wound up, start doing his
Yeah.
gritty and shut down. And he ends up, and they did in practice and they did it perfectly. And Tease Higgins is like, hey, here's what we got to do to like really like take this next level. And they're like, oh, great idea, great idea. Gets to the game, he just starts grittying, and so by the time T Higgins gets over there, it no longer makes sense because he's already grittying. So why would he need to? And it just was awkward. And I can't think of a better endorsement of why T. Higgins needs to be in black and gold next year.
And that's why you listen to this podcast for our hard-hitting, gritty analysis.
Yes,
So,
yes. The sliding doors moment that happened this season was when T. Higgins had a great idea for a celebration, and Jamal Charles, or not Jamal Charles, whoa, that's a throwback.
whoa,
Sorry, Jamal Charles, take that back. Miss him. Jamar Chase, uh, just doesn't have the attention for detail. Great receiver,
exactly.
arguably the best receiver. Doesn't have the details, and that's why T. Higgins should be a
Bengals
Steeler
should
next
not
year.
extend him at all,
Hey,
clearly.
classic case of Bungle's gonna bungle. But with that, I think that wraps up this week. We will be back next week with another episode. This one should be interesting because I don't know what's going on in the rest of the division in terms of if any of the teams are playing each other, but the Steelers obviously have a huge one, 2-game lead currently. But they're going to be playing the Eagles, and they're going to be shorthanded again. George Pickens sounding like he's not going to play. I wonder if we'll get more of George Pickens next week in terms of like what's going on with the injury, because that was something I was hoping we would get a little more insight into, was him coming up lame. And they kind of touch on it, but again, I feel like the Steelers team is like, for George Pickens' own professional safety, we need to keep him off camera as much as possible.
Pretty much, yeah.
And we were just not getting a lot of insight there. So I mean, I would be interested to see it, but what are you hoping to see next week?
Yeah, I think that that's a good one. Just, yeah, how the Steelers match up against Saquon Barkley and how they game plan for a rushing attack of, I mean, the Steelers have played some good running backs. They have not played Saquon Barkley yet this year. So I think that'll be very interesting to see. And also how what are they, 3-10 Browns, you said, match up against, I think they're playing the Chiefs this week.
Are they? Oh boy.
That is going to be rough for them. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I need to do a better job of watching what the other teams are doing. I don't know who the Bengals or Ravens are playing this week, but uh oh, the Ravens I want to say are the Giants, so they should probably have a relatively, we're probably going to get a lot of Ravens, sorry to say folks. So be ready for it to be a Ravens week next week, but we'll see.
Oh, yeah. We'll get plenty of Steelers.
All right, and with that, I think we're gonna sign out, everybody. Tune in next week. We'll be back, and here we go, Steelers.